And welcome back. We're moving into our final segment for today's show, and we've been joined by retired Major Lloyd Jones to talk about should the military and defense arm be neutral. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning, William, my brother, and good morning, Belize, of course. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Now, about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, we had a situation where the head of the military and the defense arm actually come public to say that in the issue of the ICJ, they were in support. What was your initial reaction to hearing that public declaration?
Well, to be honest, I was outraged. I could not believe what I was seeing. And it took me a moment to really process it, you know, and as I sat and as I listened, and the more they went on, the deeper my outrage became. This clearly is not the province for professional military people. This is a political issue, and the military has, certainly in a democracy, the military has no place in politics. It is not partisan politics. It's not UDP versus PUP, but this is a political issue. And I heard both the CEO and Deputy Commissioner Chester Williams say, going to great lengths to say this is not political and we should not make it political. It's an issue for all Belizeans. Look, the people of Belize are being asked to make a political decision on the 10th of April 2019. That's what it is. Right? Yeah, it's a political decision that we're being asked to make. It's not a legal issue. After we vote, and we say go to the ICJ, it then transforms into a legal issue. After the ICJ has made its ruling, it comes back to the political field. This is a political issue, and the military, particularly under the circumstances that I heard them, has no place in this discussion at all.
Some people may argue we're in uncharted territory. So there's nothing to suggest that what they did was not simply taking a step to say, listen, we have considered this, and this is our opinion. The concern is, of course, whether they will instruct those that they supervise to do same. Is that the concern?
Well, my primary concern is that they have been used, in my view, they are being used to unduly sway the Belizean people. And that is not your function. Your function is to respect the decision of the Belizean people. You're not to go out. And in fact, when you look at what was said, particularly here at Channel 5, the Deputy Commissioner kept saying that it is ICJ or war. He kept saying that. And neither the commander of the BDF nor the commandant of the Coast Guard, who would be responsible to prosecute a war, corrected him or distanced themselves from that position. In other words, they're attempting to frighten the Belizean people. You either go to the ICJ or you will go to war, and I don't want to go to war. And if you are responsible to fight the war and you're saying to me, I don't want to go to war, what are you saying to the Belizean people? It is a psychological attempt on the part of the Minister of National Security to frighten the Belizean people. Now, SEDI said this already, you know. SEDI had said it was ICJ or war, but he did not frighten the Belizean people the way the military did, because he is not responsible to fight that war. You see? So we assign that to his usual misstep. His usual misstep, his inability to control his tongue. But when the chiefs of the military say these things, it takes on an entirely different meaning, and that is why I am outraged.
This issue, in my opinion, and I had asked the panel last Monday when this conversation was being held, if they are going back to their respective organizations, because you look at the Belize Defense Force, the Coast Guard, and the Police Department, and the fact that the head of each of those respective organizations was present here, are they going back now to not only inform, because that's a part of the general campaign, is to inform the populace in terms of the vote and the importance of the vote. But the question I asked was, well, do they go back to their respective organizations and not only inform, but attempt to persuade their membership to say yes? Because then that's where perhaps it becomes controversial. It's not only then a personal or a collective position amongst the four, but they're spreading that to the respective forces.
Yeah. Well, when the government of Belize made its decision on this issue, they said, and we've heard a number of political leaders, the Prime Minister, the leader of the opposition, say, I am for a yes, but we are going to leave this up to the Belizean people for it to be a vote of conscience. We are going to educate the Belizean people and have them make their own decision. Well, if you look at that education campaign, it's clearly designed to get a yes vote. If you transfer that now across to the military, here you have the chief saying, we support a yes vote, but we'll leave it up to our individual members to make up their own decision. Well, the same thing that happened with the government and the yes vote and the campaign is the same thing that's going to happen in the Defense Force and in the Coast Guard. I'm not so worried so much about the police, to be honest with you, but my concern is with the military. So if you look at what they've done before, there's no reason to believe that they're not going to do the same thing with members of the Belize Defense Force.
Why are you concerned about the military in particular?
Because they're the ones who are responsible to defend the territorial integrity and sovereignty of this country, and this is what this is all about. The police is more of an internal security. So I was wondering how comes it was Chester Williams who was doing who appeared to me to be leading this entire process. And I could sense the discomfort in Admiral Borland and General Ortega. I served with both of them, by the way, as well as the CEO. And I could tell from their body language that they were uncomfortable with this. And so I am tempted to believe that they were coerced into this. They were called and said, look, this is what we want you to do, and go and do it.
Is that something, that's when you say that you feel as if though they were coerced into making a public appearance, is that something that at the ministerial level you can dictate to your generals that they should make a public appearance and this is what has been agreed that they will say? Well,
I think that in Belize, our political leaders will go as far as we let them. And I have served in the BDF and I have led the Post Authority for 6 years as a Post Commissioner. I can tell you, politicians will try to get you to act in a fashion that they want you to act. You have to have the moral courage to say, I am very sorry, Mr. Minister, but this is inappropriate. That is what the commander of the BDF should have done. That is what the commandant of the Coast Guard should have done. I am sorry, Mr. Minister, but this is inappropriate. They did not do that, and therefore they have to suffer the consequences of that, in my view.
Now, this ICJ issue is obviously very emotional for us. It's also highly political. How do you think this makes a decision by the general population even more difficult in terms of the information? Because while the educational campaign is supposed to provide clarity for you to vote your conscience, if you're confused, conscience has no say in any of it. So how do you think this complicates the matter further by putting another layer on it, or does it?
Well, I think it complicates it even further, indeed, because what it has done is to say to the Belizean people now, my sense is, and I could be wrong, but my sense is that a majority of the Belizean people are against going to the ICJ, precisely because there's a crisis of trust and confidence in leadership. So people don't trust those people who are leading the process. They are now attempting to put forward the chiefs of the military with the hope that they might soothe the Belizean people, and I think that has backfired. Because, like I said, if you are responsible to defend this country and you seem to be terrified of war, then I am thinking, where is this leading? And the point I want to make with respect to what they have done here is to offer as a legitimate option war. Is the ICJ or war? That's your choice. And war is not an option for the Belizean people, nor is it for Guatemala. Armed invasion is against every single international law. So how could our officials, and in particular the military chiefs, be saying to the Belizean people, it's ICJ or war. It is almost as if they're inviting Guatemala to invade us if we vote no. This is an outrage, man. These people have no business in this discussion at all. What should have been happening is that the government should have been presenting a clear case of going to the ICJ. What we have heard of a lot of is these people making legal arguments outside of the courtroom. Chester rattled off all kind of fancy Latin words trying to convince people. Look, those are legal arguments. Those are left for the courtroom. This is precisely why I told you this is a political decision. Tell me why, as a sovereign nation, I must subject the sovereignty of my country to a foreign court. That is this question, nothing else.
I have two quick questions. One, so what would you like to see from the same gentlemen who, at this juncture, what would you like to see them put in the public domain at this point that would bring comfort to you that they're not leaning, so to speak, on those that they supervise?
Nothing short of an apology to the Belizean people, that we were wrong to have come out, and even though they're entitled to their own personal view, but they were wrong to have come out in the fashion that they did, and I don't expect a repeat of it. That is all. In circumstances like this, the military is to be seen, not heard. Their duty is to prepare for any eventuality. What are the possible outcomes? And I am even more alarmed when I hear that they are saying that the minister called them and there were 3 things asked of them. 1, to formulate a position for the ministry and say why. 2, to educate their own people. And 3, to prepare for the outcome. The compromise was signed way back in 2008 and you are only now planning for the outcomes? Man, these people are joking. This has to be a joke.
But my other question, sorry, Isani, my other question has to do with this because I think you said something in terms of trust and leadership. You have, from different sides of the political divide, conversations where people are saying, listen, going to the ICJ is the right thing. However, it is not the right thing for us now because of who is in power. Is that your sentiment as well? And does that negate whether we should have a robust conversation on the way that people can then make that decision without being influenced by either side and the people who seem to be dominating the public sphere in terms of the conversation?
No, I don't support going to the ICJ now or ever under these circumstances in the manner in which they want us to go. And there are some people on the PUP side who are saying, not now, and apparently they want to wait until they get in, then they would go take us to the ICJ. Hell to the no. PUP, UDP, no P. No to the ICJ. Let me tell you why. First of all, there has never been a claim like this taken to the ICJ. You hear about Chad and Libya and other different cases that they drop. Those cases are where a country is trying to determine where the border marker is. It's a mile to the left or a mile to the right. Those are the kinds of cases that have appeared before the ICJ. Not where a country, your neighbor, is saying, one, in fact, we don't even know what the Guatemalans are going to claim. In some instances, it is all of Belize. In others, it's half of Belize. Not a single country has gone to the ICJ with that kind of a case. Let me tell you what also happens if you look at the wider picture. The United Kingdom and Argentina has a problem over the Falkland Islands. Neither of them have gone to the ICJ. They fought a war over it, and they still haven't put that matter to the ICJ. So the ICJ apparently is for third world countries. First world countries don't submit and subject their sovereignty to this kind of scrutiny and legal clarification. They don't. The second thing is this contentious case that we're taking to the ICJ, to me, violates the very sense of our sovereignty. There are other ways of getting clarification for this matter. But you understand why the British are pushing us there, because they have successfully transferred this problem from an Anglo-Guatemala dispute to a legal claim by Guatemala against Belize. That is brilliant diplomatic work, if you happen to be on that side. From our angle, we get the shitty end of the stick. You understand me? So they have successfully done that, and now we end up with this burden of having to deal with Guatemala and the claim. The argument is, well, we are the ones who have to live with the claim, and we are the neighbors, etc., etc. ICJ ruling or not, you still have to learn to live with your neighbor. The United States have issues along its southern border with Mexico. The United States has issue with its northern border with Canada. The nature and the character of those challenges depend on time, on leadership, on economy, for example. In our case, there is an eastward drift because things happen to be better here than in Guatemala. Maybe 50 years from now, when things are better there and things bad here, we might want to go that way. You're always going to have border challenges. And what they're attempting to do is to say to the Belizean people, go to the ICJ and all will be well. That is not so.
But let me ask you this. As an arm or the judicial arm of the United Nations, isn't the ICJ the place to go if you have this kind of a dispute for finality? I mean, where else do you turn? You've mentioned that perhaps there are other avenues that can be explored for resolution, but where? What other measures can be taken to resolve this matter?
First of all, and this is why this compromise required that they come back to us, to the people of Belize. And the Prime Minister has always been saying that the will of the people is sovereign. There is not a nation on earth that will fault the Belizean people for voting no to the ICJ. Because they understand that if they were in a similar position, they have to listen to their people. Now, if, as some people say, we have to settle this claim, it's a burden to us, it is stifling our development, which is not true, by the way. So let us get it resolved. I even heard somebody say, we don't want to hand this over to our children, we should solve it now. Well, there's another way. There is the advisory opinion way that we can take it to the ICJ. And what the advisory opinion would do is that it would create the clarity that we need without exposing the Belizean people to the risks that currently exist with this contentious case. There is a case right now going on before the ICJ where Mauritius has hauled the United Kingdom to the ICJ for an advisory opinion. Now, with an advisory opinion, countries can't go for an advisory opinion. You have to get one of the organs of the UN or one of the specialized agencies to ask for that opinion. So Mauritius did its diplomatic work. It went to the General Assembly and said, look, we have this problem. Can the Assembly ask for an advisory opinion? With an advisory opinion, the UK don't have to agree because it's the General Assembly that's asking. Because if Mauritius had said to the UK, let's go to the ICJ on this matter, the UK would have said no. So now that they have hauled the UK before the ICJ for an advisory opinion, and everybody believes that the advisory opinion will be against the UK, after it has been, that opinion has been given, it goes back to the General Assembly, and the General Assembly decides whether or not to adopt that opinion. We could have done exactly the same thing. We could have gone to the General Assembly and say, please ask the ICJ for us, one, if the treaty is valid. A simple question, is the 1859 treaty valid? And if the opinion comes back and says, yes, problem solved. No risk to our territory, no risk to anything at all. But you would have had an advisory opinion from the court. The second question we could have asked was, if any problem between Britain and Guatemala emanating from that agreement, could that be transferred to Belize? Is this a Belizean problem or is this an Anglo-Guatemalan dispute? Put the British back on the hot seat. We didn't do that. 3, we could have asked the ICJ whether or not the effective control of the Sarstoon amounts to annexation. See, these are the things that we should be doing, but that takes diplomatic work.
And I like that you raised that point, because there are options that we should continue to pursue in terms of diplomacy. Obviously, it's something that we did prior to gaining independence,
exactly,
and that it's within our power to achieve again. However, some people may argue we have, in effect, we've not invested, not time, not resources. we've not articulated a position post-independence of what is our Guatemalan, you know, what is our national strategy in dealing with Guatemala. You talk about the eastward drift, and we've seen how that has impacted Chiquibul, for example. Is it too late for us? Because we feel as if though, you know, with the deadline looming for us to vote, our hands are behind our back. We're being told, if you don't do this, you won't get the support globally. We don't have the resources to do it, so you're left in the lurch again. Is inaction the best solution? And can we continue to simply kick the can down the road?
Well, I agree with you that since our independence, our diplomatic or foreign service became a kind of luxury assignment for political cronies. So we have people all over the world and living the good life and not doing the work that needed to be done. And so in essence, we have squandered all the good diplomatic work that our foreparents did. When you look at what we did between 1975 and 1980, it's just outstanding diplomatic work. And we did not have all the sorts of degrees and all the fancy lawyers and all those things we have now, you know. But George Price and his team pounded the pavement. They worked and they worked and they worked to say to the rest of the world, we deserve to sit amongst the Brotherhood of Nations. After we became independent, we did not consolidate our independence. Our economy still is not where it needs to be. The defense of this country, 37 years since independence, and our defense in our own hands is worse off than it was back then. How could this be? You see? So I think what we need to do is, it's not necessarily inaction, it's that we must learn when to pause. We have to pause. Look, let's stop. Let's reconfigure this, and then let's move forward again. But to rush into this ICJ now is a horrible mistake.
One other comment, because, and I guess question, we continually say in terms of diplomacy, you know, we have to be polite. Is that our mistake? Is that the thing that has proven, you know, to be the real difficulty for us now? Because in terms of issues with Guatemala, we've always, you know, played along, so to speak. Recently, we've seen the issuance of diplomatic notes, but that has not always been the case.
Correct.
Do you think playing nice, the Belizean, you know, openness or niceness, has come back now to haunt us in a negative way?
I think diplomacy, as the word suggests, means a certain kind of civility. I think our problem has been to believe that people who smile with us and give us handouts love us. I think that has been our mistake. So that we act in the interest of the UK and in the interest of the Americans and the interest of everybody else other than the interest of Belize. Belize has to come first every single time. If Belize does not come first every single time, then what is the point? Guatemala looks after the interests of Guatemala, you know. Every little thing they do is about Guatemala. When there was that shooting along the border and the OS produced a report that said that Belizeans were well in order to do what they did, regrettable though it was, what did the Guatemalans do? Tear that up. The OS report. We know I hear that prejudice Guatemala, you're being unfair to Guatemala. No, absolutely no hesitation to defend Guatemalan interests. We, on the other hand, always try to get that little rub on the head like we did some pat liquor. Then days over, brother. This world is a real world. There are real hazards out there, and people who smile with you don't necessarily have your back. We must always have Belize's back, and nothing we should do that does not serve the interests of Belize. Let me give you a very simple example. When we signed the compromise, we set out deadlines for the referendum. First, we were going to have it jointly, and we had set the date for it to be done jointly. The Guatemalans then backed out and said, we want to go first. They set a date, then they pushed back the date another some months further, and we just kept going along because we wanted to be nice, because we thought that this is what the rest of the world wanted us to do. And all that did was to lead us right into this trap, because there was a reason why we decided to go jointly. You know, it's kind of like this. General elections are due in 2020. Can you imagine the outrage that the Belizean people would feel if the government said, we will have elections in Belize City first, and then 3 months later, we'll have elections in the rest of the country? Nobody would countenance that. When you have general elections, it's for everybody, whatever the outcome may be. It's a similar effect that they did when they separated the referendum. You go first, Guatemala, knowing full well that Guatemala would vote yes. And then have us come after, knowing full well that we would vote no. And now pressure us to say, you see, they are being civil, they are lovers of peace. You, on the other hand, you look like the warlike people who don't want to go and settle this peacefully. This is what our political leaders led us into, you know.
How would you respond to this question, though? If not now, then when? Because it's been described as a sort of Damocles where it perpetually hangs over our head, this particular claim. So, if not now, then when?
If you Google border disputes, you would find literally tens, if not hundreds, of border disputes all over the world. Some of them are even longer than the dispute that we have with Guatemala. This dispute started in, I believe, in the mid-40s, when Guatemala said to hell with Britain and you didn't build the road, right? I heard the Guatemalan president at the UN talk about this has been going on for more than a century. On the world stage, lying about this issue, you know. The 1931 exchange of notes, we were still on pace to mark the border. It was only in the 40s that they said that the treaty is invalid. But there is a dispute right now between Brazil and Uruguay. I believe that the Secretary General of the OAS is from Uruguay. That has been going on for almost 200 years. It has not stymied the development of Brazil nor of Uruguay. They have not taken it to the ICJ, but they come to us now with a unfounded claim that's less than a century old, 50 years old or so, and say to us, you have to solve this, man. This can't go on when you sit upon a claim that's more than 200 years old. That is hypocrisy, and this is precisely why I say we have to look after what is our interest. We have to stop letting these people tell us where to go and how to go and what to do. We have to look after us, and this is where we have failed.
Now, we have a difference of opinions. Now, a lot of the conversation that we've had around the ICJ issue has been, you know, perceptions or perspectives, right? People believe this, this one believes that, and obviously, like any other theory, you can go and find the research necessarily to support your point. What would you say to Belizeans at this juncture, based on the research that you have done, in terms of the position that we should take? And can we, for example, decide that, listen, we don't want to go to even have the referendum? And I'll use the example of the Brexit, for example. You had the result. They have 2 years to enact it. They're not necessarily nowhere near where they should be, but they had a referendum. Belizeans are usually from a different school of thought, where if I don't engage, I don't understand, and I don't vote, then, will a decision be made, or I didn't participate, so I'm not a part of it? How do you get Belizeans to, even if you're going to vote no or yes, how do you get people to not stay away from the vote based on what you said before, to get out and say, register my opinion, whether it's yay or nay?
Well, I think it's important for all Belizeans to understand the impact that this will have. Whichever way the decision goes, this is going to be a turning moment for us as a people. And therefore, it requires every single Belizean to be able to process this and to make a decision. But you don't get a cop-out by not going to vote. I think the great problem I have is that from the very beginning, the government was not level in its effort to so-called educate the Belizean people. They created this problem because they clearly wanted to go yes, and they figured a way or tried to find a way to get the rest of the Belizean people to say yes. When that is not what good leaders do. You should genuinely say, look, guys, this is it. And let the people decide. Having decided that, then you execute what the people say, right? So the Belizean people have to go. In fact, when you look at the re-registration numbers, it's not quite encouraging at all. And everybody who I have spoken to and I ask, have you registered? They say, no, I'm tired of voting, I'm tired of politics. And I keep saying to them, no, but there's a referendum coming, please go and register because you have to vote, right? So that's very important. And I think just overall politics has tired the Belizean people, where we keep exchanging monkey for black dog. And for some reason, they're confusing the two issues. I'm not going to vote. Well, you have to come out and vote. I mean, you don't have to, but I'm urging you to come out and vote, because this is the single greatest day in our history besides 1981 or independence. So we're going to have to encourage people to do it. But the education, so-called education campaign, has got to do better. In fact, I understand that there is a meeting of the referendum commission this afternoon. And I happen to sit on that commission, by the way, on behalf of the People's United Party. Which is kind of strange, because John Bresina is a yes, and he knows very well that I am a no, but he still put me on the referendum commission. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
All right. Well, we want to thank you very much, Major Jones, for joining us today. And of course, this is a conversation that will only intensify as we move towards the date. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you all for having me.
All right. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll have our wrap for the day. Don't go anywhere. Open Your Eyes concludes after these messages.